Welcome to the American Contractor Show. I'm your host, John Dye, and today we are just outside of Granby, Colorado, an area of Colorado that was recently affected by the wildfires. In fact, you can see behind me, there's a house that was completely burned down to the ground. And we're actually in an area where there's a lot of houses that have been burned. Our friends over at C3 Group invited us out today to look at another house that they are currently in the process of representing as public adjusters. And they're gonna give us an in-depth look into how their job goes and what they're looking for when they're dealing with these fire losses of this magnitude. We're also gonna get to talk to the policyholders and the homeowners that own this property and get some insight into what they're dealing with as they go through this entire process and why they chose to hire a public adjuster for this. So I'm excited to get to show this to you, but real quickly, this house behind us is completely burned out. Now, let's turn around here and take a look at this. This is the house that we're actually going to be looking at. And in front of us here, there was actually a barn at one point. That barn's not there anymore though. And the house that we're gonna be exploring today is owned by a couple here locally, and they live in this home, and it doesn't really look that bad. Why would they hire a PA? Let's go take a look at it though and see what's really going on at this home in Colorado. So we're here with Taylor from C3 Group, as well as Tony and Missy, and you guys own this house out here in Colorado. Love to hear from you guys though and tell us a little bit about what happened and why we're all here with C3 Group today.
Yeah, so October 21st, East Troublesome fire kind of ripped through, came across this hillside, came through the valley. We evacuated, barely made it out of here. Since then, we got back, it was like 2 weeks later. Yep. After the evacuation was lifted. Checked out the damage, the garage was gone, complete loss. And we had some wind damage to the house. It was dealing with insurance for a few weeks, realizing that we're not getting the answers we wanted. So at that time we decided to hire Taylor at C3 to help us out and hopefully get us some answers on our situation out here.
What was your guys' first thought when you guys got back and saw?
It's horrifying. It was devastating. I think I cried the whole drive from 34 back here. I mean, like for us, our house is still standing. It's not right. We can't live in it right now, but like just the neighborhood, it's just gone. Yeah. The animals that were lost during the fire that couldn't get out, just the trees gone. I mean, it was just devastating. It takes a while to kind of process it. I think I cried probably the first 3 times we would have to drive back out here. And yeah, seeing the neighbors and what they lost, especially our elderly neighbors, that was the worst part for me, because this was everything they had, and I would rather my house burnt down than theirs. We would rebuild, but it's just devastating.
So you guys had a bunch of neighbors here?
Yes. Yep. Across from us, 4 houses on that side, and then 4 or 5 going down this way as well. It's just, there's nothing left.
It's a beautiful area. I mean, it's amazing, and like coming out here and seeing this, I can only imagine what it looked like before the fire. And now to think like you guys are fortunate though. Your house is still here.
Right.
Your goats are still here.
Goats.
But you, like you said, you had a huge barn. You had a lot of stuff, and this is a change for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, our garage was. It sounds silly, like it's just we lost the garage, but it was a big 2-story garage with. I mean, that had everything in it. All of our storage, some of my mom's things, all the tools, all of our fishing stuff, my son's toys, and it, I mean, I'm happy that there was nothing more than that, but just trying to figure out what to do after you lose all of those things. We go to try to fix something, we're like, we have no tools or anything left.
Yeah, that's crazy. And and then to go through this process, I mean, people don't go through this every day. This is something that you guys will probably only go through once in your lifetime, hopefully. Right? So the whole process of going and trying to figure out how to deal with such a massive loss and thoroughly deal with such a massive loss and protect yourselves, like it's not an easy process, I'm sure, to come through, and then to have to bring in someone like Taylor and the entire team at C3 Group. I mean, they're experts at this, but how did you guys get to that point to decide to make that decision?
I think it was just the adjuster we had and the lack of knowledge. You know, when he came out and really didn't know nothing about log homes. He was from Texas. I mean, there isn't too many log homes out there. I just don't think he fully understood what was going on with the home. You know, and then the second claim, you know, the fire came through, the winds came with it, and they wanted us to file 2 separate claims for 1 incident. There's just, you know, quite a few things that were inaccurate in my eyes that we needed help.
Looking through your insurance policy on your own when you don't know anything about it, it's hard to understand like what you're actually covered for, what does this mean, and to have, you know, somebody on your side explaining it and going through it, that's huge, because obviously the insurance company is going to tell you just the minimum you need to know about it. So to have somebody on your side to explain it is a big deal.
We were getting misinformation from our insurance company also. We were getting things that would say that we're covered for this much on one piece of paper, and then you'd look at it on another piece of paper and it's a different number and different percentages, and it's like they're just trying to throw you off. And without knowing it, without being an insurance adjuster and knowing the policy, like she said, it's, you know, it's like Chinese. You need somebody that speaks Chinese to translate it for you.
And it's overwhelming. It gets overwhelming to try to keep talking to insurance. It's just, that's a big part. Like, we're trying to get on with our normal life as best we can after this, and, you know, having somebody that can talk to them so I don't have to, like, that's huge
at the end of the day,
too.
it's a massive loss.
Yeah.
I mean, a 2-story barn with full of tools and equipment and everything else. I mean, you've got a lot of things that are being lost there. Your house, you're not sure what's going on with it. You want to make sure that you are covering all your bases.
Right.
It's a prudent thing to do. I think it's a good choice. Taylor, how are you guys seeing this whole process right now, and what are your guys' thoughts on this?
So when I first spoke to Tony and Missy, I thought the thing that struck me as the most interesting about this loss was that, you know, we know that fire claims are complicated on their own when, you know, it's a catastrophic loss, when, you know, the structure burns into the ground, and all of the implications that come with that from a coverage standpoint of, you know, contents, additional living, you know, being able to rebuild, time element coverage, stuff like that. But what was interesting about this claim is that while the garage did burn down and the fire affected a lot of the area around the home itself is still standing. So a lot of the damage, aside from the roof that was blown off at the same time that the fire went through, there's a lot of damage that may or may not be self-evident. And that was kind of when they brought me in. They had raised some concerns about the structure of the property and what impact the winds that came part and parcel with the fire had on it, as well as kind of the unseen damage from the smoke and the soot and the ash blowing through the property during the course of the fire. So when we roundtabled it with our team, you know, we thought that there was basically 2 elements to this. It was the combustion byproduct side, and, you know, what impact the VOCs and the soot and the smoke had on the inside of the log home from it coming in and the contamination there, as well as taking a closer look at the structural side of it and seeing if there were wind conditions that were a product of the fire that may have, you know, structurally impaired the home. So we're out here today kind of looking at the structural aspect of it. We're going to have an environmental testing company come out next week and do air and surface testing. And from there, we're going to kind of gauge, you know, what the extent of the damage is that isn't just evident. Because when you walk up to the place, you say, oh, you know, you're really fortunate that your home didn't burn down, and they of course are. But what that puts, the place that puts them in is kind of in a gray area with regard to, okay, yeah, we understand that a catastrophic fire came through here, but, you know, without the house being burned to ground, it's really hard to tell to what extent it was damaged by the fire.
That's a big part of it. So I'd love to watch the process. Maybe give us a tour, show us exactly what you guys are seeing right now and show us the property, you know, and go from there. Is that cool?
Absolutely. Yes.
Let's do that.
So yeah, as you can see over here, we kind of backfilled in this area. This is where the garage was. I mean, it was a pretty decent sized garage with a slab in front of it. Had upstairs where we had a lot of our storage. I mean, in the winter times, I'd spend a lot of time out here. I made fishing lures and did all kinds of projects, had lots of tools and worked on equipment. Yeah, there was a lot here that's just gone now. We got on it right away and scraped up it, got all the debris removed, and still got a little pile of concrete back there from the floor. But
Yeah, and this side was obviously, this apparent structure was obviously a total loss. So, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to see, you know, that was impacted by the fire. So this portion of the loss was pretty cut and dry from a policy standpoint, because obviously there's set limits. Those were paid. There was money paid for the demolition and debris removal. So as far as, you know, this claim's concerned, this portion's more or less settled at this point.
right.
And it's really the question of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is probably the most evident damage we have that was part of the event that occurred. Was it the 21st of October?
21st.
So it was with, I mean, all of this was with the East Troublesome fire, which I'm pretty sure was like the biggest fire in Colorado history in orders of multitudes, so like exponentially bigger than any other fire. And if you can see up here where it's tarped off, a portion of the metal roof was actually peeled back and torn off the home with the wind conditions that were part and parcel with the fire. And it was laying, the portion of the roof was laying back over there on the propane tank.
Yeah,
Yep.
correct.
Okay,
And then it snowed a foot
that's very helpful.
into our bedroom after the fire. That's what helped put the fire out, but
Yeah,
double trouble inside the house.
yeah, so the winds that actually perpetuated and pushed the fire over here brought in the snow after the fact that put the fire out. But you know, when you're missing a quarter of your roof, there's a lot of water that's going to get in.
Yes.
So this is, I mean, this is a big portion of the claim. There's a lot of considerations. And Andrew, you can kind of talk about the construction of it, or what it is right now, or what it was.
Yeah, so it appears that there's, you know, timber beams that go across basically parallel with the eave, and then you have 1x8 planking that goes parallel with the rakes. And then at some point in the past, there may have been an original roof over that. This was built in '73, so the metal roof panels currently installed probably weren't installed then. So at some point they laid sleepers parallel with the rakes and fastened those to the original paneling, and then installed the metal panels that now exist over that. So you definitely had like a 3 to 4 inch void, which may have, you know, kind of assisted in making that a pretty vulnerable system. But really, it's going to be determining the extent of that, what code considerations come into play due to just repairing that, which would most likely trigger a replacement for that roof.
Yeah, and this is the portion of the claim that the carrier was trying to bifurcate from the fire loss. So an indication was made to Missy and Tony that they would have to file a second claim for wind in order to get the roof covered. So we're still in the process of kind of investigating whether or not we have enough information to substantiate that the wind conditions present during the fire were caused by the fire and were a product of the fire and were enough to actually peel that roof off, to avoid having to file two separate claims with two separate deductibles. Because all of this happened on the 21st of October when that fire came through. And it's just the matter of trying to substantiate that and tie the roof damage in with the fire loss. Because if we can't, it'll be a second claim for wind, and then we'll have to work it from that angle rather than combined with the fire claim. Yeah, so now we're inside the home, and this is obviously where a lot of kind of the unseen damage, I mean, some of it's pretty self-evident, like there's issues throughout with the chinking where it fell out, and you can kind of see the insulation in between the log beams, which may or may not, we're trying to figure out, be indicative of the structural stuff that went on with the fire. What we're going to be looking at primarily over the course of the next week or two is the environmental testing side of it. So an industrial hygienist is going to be coming in and doing air quality samples as well as surface samples for varying different surfaces to see if and to what extent there was contamination from combustion byproducts and volatile organic chemicals, soot, smoke, ash, all that, and then let us know if it can be remediated, and if it can be remediated, what the prescription is for that. But as far as the structural stuff, I don't know, do you guys want to point out some of what you guys noticed after the fire?
Yeah, I mean, first thing you notice is the chinking falling out, obviously. Some cracks in the logs, movement in the walls, you know, looking out these windows when you walk out the door. I mean, it's just bowed out big time.
The stairway going upstairs, you can now see the bedroom floors from the stairway, the bottom boards. So that was new. There's just a lot of little things that
weren't there prior to the
before,
loss.
and we came home and it's different.
Yeah, and we've been reaching out to. I reached out to Colorado State's fire science program. We've got a couple contacts in the Grand County Fire Administration that we're trying to get in touch with, and have been given a couple white papers about wind conditions and wildfires. So we're trying to see and substantiate whether or not there was conditions, you know, within the fire that were strong enough to plausibly do this. Because really, at the end of the day, you know, we believe this happened, but it's a matter of substantiating it and backing it with enough information for the carrier to say, oh yeah, this is the most efficient proximate cause of the condition we're seeing. We're going to pay for your claim. And, you know, part of that is, you know, your guys' firsthand testimony of living here and knowing the condition of the property prior to and then after the loss. But we all know that, you know, insurance companies want, you know, every I dotted and T crossed before they cut a check. So that's our job. The nice thing is like most public adjusters versus us is that if you hire a PA, you know, you're getting one guy or one individual that's handling it cradle to grave. So they're tasked with, you know, investigating the loss, substantiating the loss, hiring and aggregating experts, all that stuff. And they have no one to roundtable it off. So any idea for, you know, what they think the narrative is or the avenue to resolution is their sole idea alone. Whereas we have the benefit of being like, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at here, or what do you think of this? And someone's either gonna be like, yeah, but, or you're a total idiot. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
So it's not just
Well,
one individual.
What's funny about that though is I was an adjuster. I mean, I worked IRMA. That's what we were doing as adjusters.
Yeah.
We didn't have a whole team of forensic engineers and investigative units and everything else. I mean, if I needed to get SIU out, it was way down the road, and it had to be something that escalated so high.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the work was on my shoulders to determine the amount of loss, write the estimate according to guidelines, and then come up with something. So at the end of the day, like, were those people properly indemnified? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
And there's such a limited communication between the, you know, individual parties like that too.
Well, and I was an independent, so I'm working for a firm that's been hired by the carrier, and that firm's dealing with,
Yeah.
you know, 100 other independent adjusters. Then we're all, you know, the varied level of you know, of what they actually knew, you know, across the board. The spectrum of experience was insane.
Yeah.
Like, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually, you know, like in this instance, you have what I think you have an independent adjuster. So it's, I mean, I don't need to say the firm, but it's an IA. He's out of Texas. He's up here on a catastrophe duty. So the carrier subcontracts out to IA firms like you used to work with, and they say, we need warm bodies to write losses. So we need people on the ground quick with a set authority. So he has a ceiling of a number that he can pay, and he knows that he's like, all right, well, with a fire, I'm probably going to write the max of that. And then when he comes to instances like this, you know, if it's not a total loss, then all these other questions arise. And all the people up beyond him that aren't going to be on site to look at it, he has to try to substantiate to them what's going on. And they're going to say no. And in this case, they did what a lot of carriers do, and they contracted a third-party engineer to come out, take a look at it, who's primarily subsidized by carriers. And, you know, they wrote a report that basically credits all of the damage you're seeing here to, aside from the roof, which is pretty self-evident, to, long-term wear and tear, deterioration, standard conditions. So
We see it a lot too with adjusters, like the surrounding condition of surrounding homes. It's almost like a psychological effect almost on them where they kind of kind of diminish the damage that was in here because it was worse over there, and we see that even on hail losses.
A lot. Well, you see it on both sides where it's, You
ever seen severe damage? This isn't it. You're like, it's still damaged.
Yeah, it's.
They actually, he said that to us when he was here. That
I've seen a lot worse, and it
that's
really
what
is
he
not a
said,
healthy
exactly.
way
Yeah.
to handle claims, because
No, in the same light, they'll go back and say, with hail claims, we see it a lot, where it's like, well, every home on this street or every building in a 3-mile radius has had their roof and siding replaced because of this 3-inch hailstorm. He's like, well, I look at everything on a claim-by-claim basis, so I'm not drawing parallels to what's going on to your neighbor's roof. But on the opposite end, they'll say, well, I've been on every neighbor's roof, and the damage here isn't that bad. You're like, well, you can't have it
so
both
they use
ways.
those parallels when it benefits kind of their position. But.
And this one's an interesting one because there are questions. I mean, giving the adjuster the benefit of the doubt, you come out here and you see the place is still standing, and there isn't charring on it. It hasn't been licked by a flame, but it has damage, and just figuring out to what extent.
Taylor, what do you think was the best outcome here?
The best outcome?
Yeah, what's your goal? What's the goal of C3 in this situation?
The goal of C3 is to accurately and objectively identify, the scope and amount of the loss. So, obviously, the largest extent of that, the most, I would say, I'll just say the highest extent of that would be the instance where, we can substantiate that the wind was a condition or a product or function of the fire, and that wind was strong enough to not only tear off the roof, but to move the home to a point where it's structurally unsound, and then get into what it would cost to repair that. And if you can't repair that, it would be replacement. The limits of liability for this home are like $429,000. So between that and then the smoke remediation, if you exceed that threshold, it's a total loss. So that would be, the highest bar outcome for this claim. Do I think it's going to get there? I don't know yet. A lot of that is contingent on what the environmental testing finds and what information we can aggregate from resources on the ground or academic research on fire modeling. Because I'll be the first to say, well, I know a lot about policy language. I don't know a lot about firestorms or wind conditions in a fire. And, we're just trying to dig in and find more information that would corroborate what Missy and Tony are saying happened here.
That's cool.
And if we can do that and present it to the carrier and give them enough information to make the right decision, I think it'll significantly increase the amount of the claim.
I think it'll be proper indemnification.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. So,
yeah. Because right now where they're at is they've had the total loss on the garage. They've been paid nothing for the roof yet because there's still a point of contention on whether or not that should be included as part of the fire claim. And they've been paid about $9,000 for cleaning, so HEPA vacuuming the interior of the home.
Well, I'd love to follow the story along, if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah.
Of course.
Maybe get some follow-ups along the way, some updates from you guys as things progress.
Yeah.
Obviously, whatever the outcome is, I'd love to learn about it.
For sure.
And just kind of just follow this, because this is fascinating and it's heartbreaking, but it's also a thing that other people are going to go through this.
Right.
And how this all plays out and the process, and this is a great educational tool for people in the future.
Yeah.
To not have to probably, because I don't think there's a whole lot of content about this out there.
Yeah.
This part of it. There's content of the fire, but this part of it is so intense,
It's one of those things you never think you're going to have to deal with. I mean, we've learned a lot just about in the future, knowing your insurance policy, kind of going through it and updating it and making sure that, because we know some people that really weren't, they
haven't updated their policy.
They were under
inventorying their contents.
Right, they're very underinsured, and I mean, we were fine, with ours, but it was kind of a lesson of making sure you are keeping up with that. And
I've told at least 30 people probably around this area.
Call your insurance
The one
company.
thing I'll tell you right now that I learned from this is call your insurance company right now.
Yeah.
Update your policy. Get insured for the value of your home, because if you haven't done that in the last 5-10 years, especially in this area,
Absolutely.
where prices are just skyrocketing, you are underinsured right now.
Mm-hmm.
Get it taken care of, because with all the fires we've been having in Colorado and the lack of snow, I mean, you look outside right now, it's
December
just
7th.
First week
Yeah.
of December, we have
crazy.
no snow on the ground. Next year is going to be devastating again.
Yeah.
You know, I really think whatever didn't burn in Colorado this year is
Well,
going to
yeah,
burn next year.
We came out of drought conditions for what, like 3 months or something like that, and they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, it's
that's
great.
it.
You know, we got great runoff." Like that was 2 winters ago,
Yeah.
and now we're right back in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Worse than
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is like kind of the new norm.
Yeah.
Like I was up in Montana last week, and they had a big fire on the Bridgers, and like people that have lived up there for 3 or 4 generations are like, "We've never seen that burn ever."
Yeah.
And they don't have like the beetle kill issue like they do down here.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's just the snowpack's been low, the runoff's been low, it's been dry. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Thank you guys.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you all for doing this and for
Yeah.
letting us into your home and kind of follow this process and tell this story. So,
yeah.